Just 34 days after the marriage, the wife disappeared without a trace. When the police investigated, they discovered that the wife had fled to Los Angeles, USA, while she was pregnant with his child. However, what awaited the man was that his wife had disappeared along with her ID card, 8 real estate certificates, and cash amounting to $388,000. What was even more shocking was that she had manipulated public opinion, turning herself into a pitiful pregnant woman, a victim of domestic violence. After discovering this disgusting truth, the husband became extremely enraged and devised an international revenge plan involving up to $1.6 million. Will he succeed in taking revenge on his wife? Now let's explore this true story that happened in China. But first, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to receive notifications whenever a new video is posted. This is a true story that took place in Shenzhen City, Guangdong Province, China. The man in this story is Li Ping, a 40-year-old who is a well-known successful entrepreneur. On the night of June 19, 2015, Li Ping had just stepped out of his luxury car and stood at the door, calling out to his beloved wife, Dan, I'm home now." But unlike before, when his wife would smile and come out to greet him upon hearing his voice, this time there was no response. The atmosphere became eerily silent. Confused, Li Ping stepped forward to the door, and the scene before his eyes left him stunned. Clothes were strewn everywhere. Drawers and safes had been opened, and it seemed that all valuable items and documents had vanished. Sensing that something was wrong, Li Ping hurried to the Nanshan District Police Department in Shenzhen to report the incident. According to Li Ping, his wife, Zhang Shudan, who had been married for only 34 days and was pregnant, had suddenly disappeared along with many valuable property documents. After the police investigation, a shocking truth was revealed. In fact, Li Ping's house had not been broken into. The person behind everything was Li Ping's newly married wife of 34 days, Zhang Shudan. Zhang Shudan had taken $388,000 in cash and all of Li Ping's legitimate documents, including his ID card, household registration, property certificates, marriage certificate, and Hong Kong and Macau passports. The final truth of the case was revealed, but it was something unacceptable to Li Ping. He had never imagined that his usually kind and sweet wife could commit such a heinous act. So, what is the true identity of Zhang Shudan? What is the final outcome of this case? Let us rewind time and go back to the events before Zhang Shudan disappeared, along with the enormous assets of her wealthy husband. Since high school, Li Ping had been an outstanding student. After being admitted to Wuhan University with impressive achievements, Li Ping continued to demonstrate his intelligence and talent, graduating with honors. Through relentless effort, Li Ping quickly became the president of an investment company in Shenzhen, possessing assets worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Although Li Ping was a successful businessman with a stable life, his marriage was not going smoothly. After a broken marriage and having a daughter with his ex-wife, Li Ping chose to live single, dedicating most of his time to work. However, as a successful man in his 40s, Li Ping had many women surrounding him. Nevertheless, Li Ping still could not find a suitable woman over the long period. On an evening in September 2014, Li Ping, then the CEO of a reputable investment company in Shenzhen, accepted an invitation to attend an elegant dinner party from a friend. This is a rare opportunity for him to spend time immersing himself in the elite social atmosphere instead of being busy with work. Li Ping did not expect that right here. His life would take an unexpected turn when he met the woman who would later become his wife, Zhang Shudan. Zhang Shudan was born in 1985, hails from Shanxi, and also graduated from Wuhan University, like Li Ping. At that time, Zhang Shudan was a manager at a bank, possessing a striking appearance and confident demeanor, and she was sent to represent the bank at the party. To expand the potential customer network, Zhang Shudan politely asked for Li Ping's phone number and gave him her business card. After the meeting, the two did not contact each other further. But a month later, Zhang Shudan took the initiative to message Li Ping through social media. Their relationship did not develop into a business partnership, but they continued to chat regularly and gradually became close. As time passed, they occasionally met for drinks or dinners together, and their relationship became increasingly intimate. During one drinking session, Zhang Shudan shared her life story with Li Ping, receiving sympathy from the 40-year-old man. Zhang Shudan recounted that her parents divorced when she was only 3 years old. Since then, she lived with her elderly grandparents. From a young age, she endured many hardships, but fortunately, she was deeply loved by her grandparents. They worked hard to help her pursue education through university, and she graduated with an excellent degree. Zhang Shudan decided to work in Shenzhen after graduating from Wuhan University to repay her grandparents' kindness. Her current life is stable, and her grandparents can enjoy their old age knowing that she has a good job. However, Zhang Shudan confided that memories from her childhood occasionally resurfaced in her dreams. Overwhelmed with emotion, she cried for the first time in front of Li Ping, even though she usually only wore a bright smile when with him. That image of Zhang Shudan awakened Li Ping's innate protective instincts, as he had feelings for her all along. After a fateful night of talking in mid-October 2014, they shared intimate stories and confirmed their feelings for each other, then entered into a romantic relationship. Li Ping owned multiple companies in his name, so work always consumed him with frequent business trips to various places. Zhang Shudan always messaged via WeChat to check up on him and show concern, from small matters to worries about his health and mental well-being. Despite his success and wealth, Li Ping never forgot his responsibility to the community. In the early stages of his career, he participated in disaster relief projects and poverty alleviation programs in difficult areas such as Van Nam and Quichao. During those missions, he had the opportunity to meet many impoverished children and witness their harsh living conditions firsthand. It was these experiences that motivated him to continue engaging in charitable activities, supporting education for children to give them the opportunity to attend school. These silent contributions earned him recognition as one of the top 10 outstanding entrepreneurs in Luohu District, Shenzhen. Li Ping's sensitivity and compassion seemed to make him feel even closer to his girlfriend Zhang Shudan, who had also struggled with a difficult life since childhood. By November 2014, Zhang Shudan confided in him about her job at a bank, where she was working with a modest salary. Zhang Shudan whispered to Li Ping that after spending on cosmetics and clothes, her remaining monthly income was very limited. With the desire to reduce financial burdens and better care for Li Ping, Zhang Shudan proposed moving in with him. After hearing Zhang Shudan's sincere words, Li Ping felt that since they were both single and had a deep romantic relationship, living together was only natural. Li Ping immediately agreed, feeling happy because of Zhang Shudan's gentleness and kindness. It was Zhang Shudan's daily care and attention that made Li Ping feel warmth in his heart, as if he had found an ideal companion for his life. After moving in with Li Ping, Zhang Shudan gradually became accustomed to a comfortable life, and her material demands continued to increase. With 20 years of hard work in Shenzhen, Li Ping had built a solid career and stable finances, allowing him to meet most of Zhang Shudan's desires without worry. Noticing his generosity, Zhang Shudan did not hesitate to express her desires for fashionable clothes, designer handbags, and luxury items. For her, having Li Ping as a financial support was wonderful, an opportunity to satisfy her material dreams. In January 2015, Zhang Shudan gently whispered to Li Ping about wanting to travel to Saipan with her close friends, but being short of money. Upon hearing this, Li Ping just smiled, gently pinched her cheeks, and said he would transfer the money so she could enjoy the trip with her friends. Zhang Shudan was overjoyed to receive this support and did not hesitate to talk more about the expected costs for the trip. Li Ping quickly transferred $10,000 to her, covering both travel expenses and an additional $5,000 deposit for the trip. After the trip, the deposit naturally belonged to Zhang Shudan. Li Ping just smiled, believing that it was only natural for a woman to enjoy spending money. On a day in February 2015, when Li Ping had just returned home from work, Zhang Shudan joyfully approached him with an excited demeanor and announced that he was about to become a father, which made Li Ping extremely happy. After a moment of hesitation, Zhang Shudan gently said, "The crystallization of our love is about to come into the world. I think we should prepare a proper home for our child." Her words clearly implied marriage. Li Ping looked at Zhang Shudan, who was radiant before him, but he still maintained a cautious attitude. Although he was grown up and had a stable career, Li Ping still felt that getting married was a step too hasty. He gently replied, "Let's let the child be born first, and then we will discuss marriage in more detail." In his heart, Li Ping hoped that both of them would understand each other better. Because they have a child together, He believed that marriage was only a matter of time. A few weeks later, Zhang Shudan appeared with a worried expression, making Li Ping curious. When asked, Zhang Shudan said in a choked voice, "My maternal grandparents in the countryside are not well. I just called home and learned that my grandmother is seriously ill and has to be hospitalized. I want to go visit them because they have worked hard to raise me from childhood until now." Moved by Zhang Shudan's filial piety, Li Ping did not hesitate to give her his credit card, advising her to take good care of her grandparents. Zhang Shudan accepted the card with a grateful look, not forgetting to give Li Ping a sweet kiss. About a month after returning to her hometown, Zhang Shudan called Li Ping, reporting that the money on the card had been used up, but her grandmother's health had not improved much. Li Ping immediately transferred $12,000 to her without hesitation, and said, "Money is not important. What's important is your grandmother's health. If you need anything else, let me know." Not long after, Zhang Shudan returned to Shenzhen, placing her hand gently on her growing belly, and softly said to Li Ping, "Our child is growing up every day. Let's get married soon so I can officially take care of the child." Moreover, Zhang Shudan mentioned Li Ping's 8-year-old daughter from his previous marriage and expressed her desire to take care of the girl. Hearing about his 8-year-old daughter, Li Ping couldn't help but be moved. He gently touched Zhang Shudan's belly, nodded, and said, "All right, I will do as you say." On May 15th, 2015, at the Luohu District Civil Affairs Bureau in Shenzhen, Li Ping and Zhang Shudan officially received their marriage registration. Zhang Shudan considered this a significant event, so she proposed to hold a wedding party at her hometown, and Li Ping completely agreed to this. They decided to return to Hanzhong, Shanxi Province, in June to visit Zhang Shudan's grandparents and hold a grand party. When the two arrived in Hanzhong, Zhang Shudan gently confided that her grandparents were old and frail and still did not have a proper house. Now, since her relatives and friends all know she is married, she hopes to have a separate house for her grandparents in Hanzhong. To demonstrate sincerity in their marriage, Li Ping ultimately agreed to purchase a house here, as a testament to his love and commitment. The housing prices in Hanzhong were much cheaper than in Shenzhen, so both decided to choose a commercial apartment in the city of Hangdai. Li Ping spent about $70,000 to buy this apartment, but Zhang Shudan insisted on adding her name to the property certificate. The 40-year-old man thought that since they were legally married, having a joint name was reasonable, and he eventually agreed. After returning to Shenzhen, Zhang Shudan quickly seized the opportunity and continued to make new demands. She wanted to buy a more luxurious new house. Li Ping looked at his petite, graceful wife leaning against him and couldn't find a reason to refuse. To appease his wife, he paid nearly $1 million in advance for a commercial apartment in Nanshan District, Shenzhen, with a total value of up to $4.2 million. The apartment was registered in Zhang Shudan's name, but Li Ping was the one who paid the mortgage and related fees. Therefore, although the documents bore Zhang Shudan's name, Li Ping was the true owner of the house. If things had stopped there, they might have had a happy ending with the talented and beautiful couple living together. But in reality, it wasn't that simple. A few days after the wedding, Zhang Shudan smiled at Li Ping and sweetly said she wanted to mobilize a deposit to fund her own business. Li Ping looked at his newlywed wife with love and thought that he still had more than $283,000 in cash, so he immediately expressed his support for his wife's work. By around 10 a.m. on June 18, 2015, Li Ping had mobilized a total of $388,000 and transferred that amount to Zhang Shudan's personal account. Upon receiving a confirmation message from the bank, Zhang Shudan knew the money had arrived and happily told Li Ping, "I will go to the bank to get the deposit certificate for the new company and buy some food on the way home. You can rest assured and continue working at the company." Li Ping listened and returned to the company. All morning, he called and texted his wife, but received no response. Her phone was turned off. By evening, when he returned home, he couldn't find his wife, while the belongings in the house showed signs of disturbance. Li Ping immediately went to the police to report his wife's disappearance. Finally, at 10 p.m. on June 19th, Li Ping returned to the police station to receive the investigation results. The truth he discovered left him speechless. His wife, Zhang Shudan, had left Shenzhen at 11:30 a.m. on the 18th, then boarded a Cathay Pacific flight to Los Angeles, USA, and arrived there on the afternoon of the 19th. Li Ping felt as if a bomb had just exploded in his head, and the surrounding noise plunged him into a chaotic world. The investigators at the police station were still talking, but he could only hear fragmented, faint sounds as if echoing from a distant place. It took Li Ping a long time to gradually regain his composure and try to piece together what he had just heard. Returning home in a state of confusion, Li Ping was even more shocked to discover that many of his important assets had disappeared. It wasn't just personal documents like his ID card, 8 real estate certificates, marriage registration, Hong Kong and Macau travel permits, passport, and household registration book, but also valuable items such as gold, silver, jade, and other valuable objects in the house had vanished without a trace. Standing in the empty room, the feeling of betrayal overwhelmed his mind. He thought he had never treated Zhang Shudan poorly, but these signs indicated that the woman he had trusted for so long might actually be a fraudster. As soon as the police took over the case file, they revealed to Li Ping some information he had never heard before. Zhang Shudan's company was registered in Shenzhen under the name Shu Shangmei Health Management Technology Co., Ltd., purportedly operating in the field of computer software development and beauty services. What shocked him even more was that the company had over 10 employees, all of whom were young and beautiful women. Zhang Shudan frequently traveled between Hong Kong and the mainland, claiming to purchase essential oils for the company. However, the truth was more complicated. She had used this guise to organize beauty and healthcare services at the homes of wealthy clients. When dating Li Ping, Zhang Shudan didn't hesitate to go to hotels 4 times, once staying at a hotel just a short distance from his home. This blatant betrayal made Li Ping doubt whether the fetus in her womb was actually his. So, Li Ping secretly investigated and checked the information from the mother and child healthcare card that Zhang Shudan had registered at Shenzhen Hospital on May 14th. In the column for the father's name, he was astonished to find it left blank. This detail served as an implicit piece of evidence confirming his suspicion was correct. This was the reason Zhang Shudan always made excuses to go for prenatal checkups alone, never allowing him to accompany her. The more he investigated, the more secrets about his wife Zhang Shudan became clear, leading Li Ping from one surprise to another. Li Ping learned that before marrying him, Zhang Shudan had been married once before, but that marriage lasted only 8 months. This was a huge shock to Li Ping, as he had never known about it. On the day of their marriage registration, he was busy with work, and Zhang Shudan had completed all the paperwork by herself. When he returned, everything was already done. Because he placed absolute trust in his wife, and did not carefully check the items in the form, when things fell apart, Li Ping discovered that Zhang Shudan had written the words divorce in the previous marriage column. In great pain and anger, Li Ping decided to learn more about Zhang Shudan's past. He was determined to meet her ex-husband to clarify everything. Zhang Shudan's ex-husband, Mr. Huang, stated that he and Zhang Shudan were married in 2011, but divorced in 2012 due to her reckless spending habits. After the divorce, Zhang Shudan continued to call her ex-husband to ask for money. By 2013, she took the initiative to meet Mr. Huang to propose remarriage. But seeing that her ex-wife was still ambiguously seeing many other men, Mr. Huang refused. Mr. Huang's words made Li Ping realize that Zhang Shudan had been exploiting relationships with many wealthy men over the years to satisfy her financial needs. After further investigation, Li Ping discovered that Zhang Shudan had many boyfriends since her university days. She had relationships with a man from Wuhan University and another in the shooting team. After graduating, Zhang Shudan continuously changed boyfriends, and each time she met someone new, she received a considerable amount of money. In these relationships, there was an instance where Zhang Shudan fell in love with Mr. Zhao, a jeweler, and exploited his feelings to seize a precious gem worth USD 424,000 from him. Not stopping there, she continued to associate with Mr. Lei, another wealthy businessman, and received valuable assets from him, such as luxury cars and a private apartment. After liquidating the RV and selling all her expensive jewelry, she went to the United States with this man. Upon discovering the entire truth, Li Ping was extremely shocked, feeling humiliated and angry. He declared that Zhang Shudan must be punished at any cost. At the same time, Li Ping recalled the property he had purchased in Hangzhou, and immediately went there to investigate. There, he uncovered another shocking piece of information. On June 11th, Zhang Shudan had signed a power of attorney to transfer the house in Hangzhou City, with a processing period of 60 days. On June 19th, Zhang Shudan flew to the United States, and by July 8th, a woman named Zhang Yuan had, on her behalf, obtained the real estate certificate of the Hanzhong Evergrande area and handed it over to Zhang Shudan's adoptive mother, Jiang Yuping. Li Ping's USD 388,000 had been transferred from Zhang Shudan's bank card to a man named Lin Qin on June 18. Lin Qin, a graduate of Fudan University, was actually Zhang Shudan's lover, and the two had a secret romantic relationship. When Zhang Shudan fled to the United States, she gave birth to a baby girl, and in the child's birth certificate, Lin Qin was listed as the father. Everything proceeded according to the perfect plan that Zhang Shudan had prepared in advance, making Li Ping increasingly convinced that this was a meticulously arranged scam. However, because the relationship between Li Ping and Zhang Shudan was legally married, according to Chinese regulations, there are no laws that address fraudulent behavior within marriage. This made Li Ping understand that, based solely on the current evidence, bringing Zhang Shudan to justice would be a significant challenge. To retaliate against his cunning wife, Li Ping decided to implement a two-pronged plan. On one hand, he filed a lawsuit and requested the police to expand the investigation into the case. On the other hand, he used his social connections and financial resources, determined to put Zhang Shudan in jail. First, Li Ping approached the Department of Internal Affairs and the police department to request the reinstatement of his personal legal documents, then filed a lawsuit in court and sought the freezing of Zhang Shudan's assets, including the houses related to the case. Through research into Zhang Shudan's hometown, Li Ping learned that she was abandoned by her parents at the age of 1 and was adopted by an elderly couple, living on a minimal living allowance. Classmates from Wuhan University informed him that Zhang Shudan not only studied logistics, but also held degrees in economics and management, and was among the top 20 in the provincial university entrance examinations that year. She was admitted to the Russian language program at Wuhan University and was also proficient in English. With outstanding academic performance, Zhang Shudan passed the IELTS and TOEFL exams, being recognized as a rare talent. Despite her high academic achievements, Zhang Shudan had serious ethical issues. After joining Shenzhen Construction Bank in 2008, she was dismissed in 2010. While working at the bank, Zhang Shudan quickly realized that there were many wealthy clients in Shenzhen and Guangzhou, which inspired her to devise a scam. In Zhang Shudan's view, most emerging wealthy individuals were greedy and uninformed, making it easy for her to recruit like-minded colleagues to form a scam group. It turned out that Zhang Shudan and her accomplices had been quietly compiling a list of high-net-worth individuals in Shenzhen and Guangzhou for an extended period. They not only collected information but also skillfully developed a network of female employees in banks in these cities, recruiting and training them in Shenzhen and Hong Kong. Zhang Shudan's training program was very systematic, guiding them on approaches and transfers when pregnant or after giving birth, the methods for identifying the real estate of wealthy clients, skills to exit the banking system, and building a life in the United States. Zhang Shudan's plan aimed to create a one-stop service for targets they wanted to scam. After giving birth in the U.S., these employees would use the child as a tool to request financial support from wealthy fathers in China. The group's operational mechanism was highly professional. Each time they succeeded with an order, they would return to China to plan other cases, continuing to recruit and train new members. After Zhang Shudan fled to the United States, her group in Hong Kong quickly coordinated, with at least 2 accomplices ready to support her. Over 5 years, Li Ping, a victim, quietly filed lawsuits and successfully froze 2 of Zhang Shudan's properties in Hanzhong and Shenzhen. He gradually collected evidence of the group's crimes, not only submitting it to the court, but also publicly disclosing it through various media outlets in the United States. To maximize pressure, Li Ping even offered a $140,000 reward for anyone who provided information to help capture Zhang Shudan, making it difficult for her to live peacefully in the U.S. Li Ping did not spare any expenses, spending a colossal $1.4 million to hire lawyers, translators, police officers, detectives, and even members of the underworld, with the sole goal of destroying Zhang Shudan and her scam network. During the pursuit, he also employed counterintuitive tactics to disrupt the internal operations of Zhang Shudan's group. Li Ping intentionally approached Lin Qin an important member of the group, and persuaded him to come to Hong Kong. He pretended to be disappointed with the legal system, then lured Lin Qin back to China under the pretext of selling real estate in Nanshan District, Shenzhen, aiding the police in arresting Lin Qin. As for Zhang Shudan, her life in the United States was not as easy as imagined after escaping from her homeland. As soon as she arrived in the U.S. in 2015, she faced continuous pressure from both domestic and international media and press. At the same time, Li Ping, whom she had broken up with and who had betrayed her, hired private detectives to closely monitor Zhang Shudan's every move, causing her to live in a state of panic and anxiety. Knowing she couldn't live peacefully in the U.S., Zhang Shudan resorted to a delaying tactic, informing Li Ping that she was pregnant with a baby boy. She hoped that this news would awaken the paternal love in Li Ping's heart, giving her more safe time and preventing her from being pursued. However, Li Ping was no longer easily deceived. Although he appeared outwardly joyful, he was secretly arranging for someone to track her every move in the U.S. After Zhang Shudan gave birth and was staying at home with her newborn baby girl, Li Ping hired someone to find her. Realizing this, Zhang Shudan decided to hide with her daughter, not daring to go outside, fearing that any movement would be detected by Li Ping. To cope, she turned to social media, frequently posting sorrowful stories about her circumstances on her WeChat circle, deliberately spreading bad rumors about Li Ping. This tactic directly affected Li Ping's businesses. Within a short period, 5 of his domestic companies experienced a severe decline in stock value, leading to the risk of bankruptcy. Thinking she could cause Li Ping to collapse and end the pursuit, Zhang Shudan made a major mistake by underestimating his strength and resilience. Not giving up, Li Ping continued to diligently follow Zhang Shudan's trail. Feeling there was no escape, Zhang Shudan entrusted her daughter to a kind couple in the U.S. and then planned to escape once again. She moved from Los Angeles to Phoenix City in 2017, evading the increasingly intense pursuit by Li Ping's private detectives. To survive, she repeated old tactics, befriended a new boyfriend, and relied on him to obtain new identification documents. However, unfortunately, Li Ping discovered information about this boyfriend and used money to bribe him into betraying her. In September 2018, Li Ping, along with a private investigator, followed the trail to Phoenix. In a small airport, Zhang Shudan had spent half a year honing her piloting skills to decide to fly a small airplane in hopes of escaping across the border to Mexico. However, Li Ping ambushed her in time at the runway, forcing her to stop just before leaving U.S. territory, and the final plan failed in desperation. Zhang Shudan was prosecuted on 23 serious charges, including illegal immigration, armed assault on police, illegal residency, financial fraud, child kidnapping, and human trafficking. When facing the indictment, Zhang cried, attempted to confess, and pleaded before Li Ping to seek a reduction in her sentence. However, Li Ping was not moved by Zhang Shudan's crocodile tears. Ultimately, Zhang Shudan was sentenced to 65 years in prison and had to spend the rest of her life in the Tucson Foreign Women's Prison near the San Francisco border in the USA to pay for all her crimes. From 2015 to 2019, under the continuous pressure of law enforcement agencies and the judicial systems in both China and the USA, along with Li Ping's relentless efforts, this large-scale transnational fraud case was finally resolved. On February 20, 2017, the Hanzhong City Court in China officially restored 100% of Li Ping's ownership rights to the house in Hanzhong. Subsequently, on August 20, 2020, the Luohu Court in Shenzhen also ruled to return full ownership of the house in Nanshan District, Shenzhen to Li Ping. At the same time, the marriage between Li Ping and Zhang Shudan was declared invalid. Additionally, the U.S. court ordered Zhang Shudan to return the $388,000 USD she had fraudulently obtained from Li Ping for investment in real estate in the USA. Throughout the arduous 5-year journey, Li Ping overcame numerous obstacles and approached countless organizations to pursue justice, from the police, lawyers in China and the USA, private detectives in the USA, translators, Chinese and Mexican associations, churches, and more. He continuously sought clues at real estate agencies, Chinese restaurants, car dealerships, supermarkets, banks, and even the Chinese consulate in Los Angeles and the U.S. consulate in Guangzhou. With the support of many friends in both China and the USA, Li Ping successfully exposed the true faces of this fraud criminal group. This was truly a sophisticated scam, carried out by a cunning woman with exceptional intelligence. But in the end, Zhang Shudan had to face Li Ping, a man who does not act conventionally and is determined to bring the case to light. If it were someone else, they might have given up early in the face of this complex lawsuit. However, Li Ping spared no time or effort and spent over $1.6 million USD to seek justice for himself.
Janet Overton's admirable marriage fell into a deep abyss when she was suspected by her husband of having an affair with a young, handsome male colleague. It was from this point that Janet began to experience strange phenomena occurring continuously on her own body, and she suddenly passed away shortly after. This shocked everyone around her, as Janet was previously a completely healthy woman who was always optimistic and cheerful. During the investigation into Janet Overton's unexplained illness, investigators examined her relationships and discovered a very malicious plot. So what really happened to Janet Overton, and what was this malicious plot? Before we dive into the details of today's story, Dana Point, a city in Orange County, California, is known for being one of the most beautiful surfing spots in the U.S. This is also the setting of today's story. The events began on January 24, 1988, a beautiful Sunday perfect for people to go out and relax after a tiring week of work. Like many other residents of Dana Point, Janet Overton, 46, after having breakfast at home, was preparing to pack up with her 18-year-old son, Eric, for a day out. They had planned to go whale watching by boat with some family friends that day. However, tragedy struck before they could even step on board as Mrs. Janet suddenly collapsed right in front of the house. Eric, panic-stricken, rushed into the house to call his father, Richard Overton. Hearing about his wife, Mr. Richard immediately called emergency services at 911, and the father and son then followed the ambulance to the hospital. Although the doctors did their utmost to save Mrs. Janet, it was ultimately too late. Janet's death was a huge shock to her relatives, friends, and colleagues. It was known that Mrs. Janet was an important member of the Capistrano Unified School District's Board of Trustees, and at the time of her incident, she was living with Richard Overton, her husband of 19 years, and their son, Eric. Because Janet was loved by many and quite well known in the community, everyone who knew her was saddened and wanted to know what had happened to her. However, the mystery began to unfold, as the forensic examination could not provide any explanation for Janet's cause of death. As a result, Janet's death certificate listed the cause of death as undetermined. A friend told the police that Janet had been suffering from a mysterious illness for several years. Janet had complained to her friend about unexplained sores appearing on her body, causing pain when clothes rubbed against them. Occasionally, she would also feel nauseous and dehydrated. It even made Janet's mobility difficult, and at times she had to use crutches like a disabled person. Seeing her immense suffering, Janet sought medical help at various places, but almost no doctor in the city could identify the illness Janet was suffering from. Although there was no satisfactory explanation for Janet's death, authorities found no evidence that she was harmed by anyone. Her sudden departure remains a mystery with no clear solution. Janet's husband, Richard Overton, appeared deeply saddened and mournful for his unfortunate wife. He tearfully said, "She was a wonderful, capable, successful, and kind woman. I will never forget her, and I just want to say that I loved Janet very much." While investigating the unknown illness, the investigators also looked into Janet's relationships as a school board member to see if she had made enemies, as investigators still thought the likelihood of Janet being harmed was not low. The police found that Janet's progressive ideas sometimes led to conflicts with a few conservative members of the community. Detectives also learned of rumors about a smear campaign alleging that Janet had been cheating on her husband. Deborah Jackson, the Orange County attorney, said, "There was a paper posted about Janet Overton's scandal on all the cars in the county office parking lot." Investigators also discovered that Janet's health began to decline around the time rumors of the affair started. Janet was rumored to be having an affair with an official, and the man in question was revealed to be Bill Dawson, an assistant director at her workplace. When questioned by the police, Bill initially denied the affair, but a few days later called the police to confess to the extramarital affair with Janet. The reason Bill gave was that he was initially afraid that the affair could cause him to lose his family and job. Later, he agreed to tell everything he knew. Bill admitted to having a long-term affair with Janet before she was murdered. The time when they started this illicit relationship was in 1981, when both were on a business trip in San Francisco. Afterwards, they often secretly met at hotels, motels, and in cars for their rendezvous. In 1985, their secret affair was exposed when flyers accusing Janet of infidelity appeared. The school district superintendent spoke to Bill about the flyers accusing Janet and demanded that he end the relationship if he was involved with Janet. However, despite everything, Janet and Bill continued their affair for a few more years. The relationship ended in 1987, around the time Janet began to develop painful sores and rashes all over her body. Bill stated that the relationship ended due to Janet's health issues and because she became a close friend of his wife, which made him feel guilty. Bill mentioned that despite the breakup, they remained friends and met quite often. When the investigation team was focusing on Janet's death as possibly related to Bill, they were shocked by a revelation from a friend of Janet. According to this friend, Janet was deeply distressed because she initially didn't know who had posted the flyers accusing her of infidelity. To uncover the truth, Janet hired a private detective to investigate secretly, and the results were beyond Janet's belief. It was revealed that her longtime husband, Richard Overton, was the one behind the flyers aimed at damaging his wife's reputation. With this information, the police immediately began to look into the couple's marital life. Richard was known to be a university lecturer, a mathematician with a PhD in psychology, and a business consultant. He was someone who was always concerned about his status. Meanwhile, Janet was a cheerful, independent, outgoing woman who enjoyed helping others. Although Janet did not have as high an educational background as her husband, she was elected to the school board and was well known in the community. An acquaintance of the couple said that Richard was very frustrated and jealous of his wife's fame because he felt he was smarter than her. He was very surprised that Janet was elected by so many people, with a future potentially leading to a high-level leadership position, the person said. Initially, Richard and Janet bonded over their shared interest in computers, but after 19 years, the cracks in their marriage became evident and difficult to repair. The divorce was imminent, so some of Janet's friends speculated that this might be why she had an affair. The couple had a son who was in his final year of high school, and it was said that Janet always loved and spoiled her son, Eric. Eric, in turn, was more affectionate towards his mother than towards his strict father. The mother and son even often went to watch soccer games together on weekends or did small chores. In July 1988, 6 months after Janet's death, the police received an unexpected call from a woman named Dorothy Boyer. This woman claimed to be Richard's ex-wife and that they had 4 children together. It was from this point that the dark history of this man's marriages began to be revealed. According to Dorothy, she had married Richard about 20 years earlier. Dorothy believed they had a happy marriage until she discovered that her husband was living a double life. Although Richard was living with Dorothy and their 4 children, and they were legally married, he also had a second home. There, Richard was living with another woman named Caroline Hutchison. They even married and had a child together. When Dorothy discovered this, she was so furious that she filed for divorce to distance herself from this peculiar husband. The court granted Dorothy the couple's house, and she continued to live there after officially divorcing in 1969. Richard was already very angry when Dorothy was determined to divorce him, and he was even more upset when she remained in the family home. Around the same time as the divorce request, Dorothy suddenly noticed a decline in her health. Like Janet, Dorothy also felt nauseous and began to develop sores on her body. One day, while Richard was at home, Dorothy noticed a strange smell from her milk and suspected that Richard had put something in it. With a woman's intuition, Dorothy had the milk tested and found a large amount of selenium, a substance that can be fatal in high doses. Dorothy was enraged and confronted Richard, who was forced to admit that he had put selenium in his wife's food and drinks. He justified that he had psychological issues and agreed to see a counselor. Therefore, Dorothy was reluctant to report him to the police and temporarily forgave her ex-husband. However, upon learning of Janet's death, Dorothy suspected that her ex-husband might have poisoned his wife and decided to tell the police everything she knew about the man.
Talking to the police, Dorothy emphasized that investigators should take a closer look at Janet's case because she knew well what Richard was capable of. Dorothy could also provide evidence to the police. After Janet's death, she drove her daughter to meet her biological father. There, she found a woman's eyeliner pencil, rubber gloves, and a syringe in Richard's desk drawer. Feeling suspicious, Dorothy took these items and handed them over to the police later. After analysis, experts confirmed that the eyeliner pencil contained selenium. Based on this new information, the police once again thoroughly reviewed the circumstances surrounding Janet's death. They found that long before her death, she had been in a weakened state with symptoms including nausea, difficulty walking, pain, and ulcers all over her body, with peeling and discoloration of her feet. The police discovered that these symptoms were identical to those Dorothy experienced after filing for divorce from Richard. Although they believed Dorothy's information, investigators noted that the circumstances of the two women were different. Richard was alleged to have poisoned Dorothy after the couple began divorce proceedings, and at that time, he was very angry. However, Richard himself claimed that his marriage to Janet was very happy. Therefore, investigators first had to determine if Janet had been poisoned. The police could not exhume Janet's body since she had been cremated. However, some internal organs were preserved for the investigation. Investigators followed clues that Richard had knowledge of poisoning. They then sought the assistance of Paul Sedgwick, a highly experienced toxicologist from the Orange County Sheriff's Department. When Paul examined Janet's stomach, the expert immediately detected the smell of cyanide, a highly toxic substance that should not be present in the human body at a significant concentration. However, cyanide has a distinctive odor that is not easily detected, meaning Janet had ingested cyanide shortly before her death. Now the police knew what had truly caused Janet's death. The next step was to determine how the victim had accidentally absorbed this toxin into her body. Through their investigation, they found that Richard had worked in the defense industry and had a partner involved in gold mining who could access cyanide and other metallurgical materials. Additionally, as a mathematician, Richard would likely be very knowledgeable about chemicals and their reactions. During questioning, Richard maintained that he had a happy marriage and could not have obtained cyanide. However, Eric expressed concern that his parents were on the verge of divorce and admitted that it was possible his father had killed his mother. At this point, the police received a warrant to search Richard's home. There, detectives collected diaries and recovered deleted records from Richard's computer. In the diaries, Richard wrote about his wife in ways contrary to what he had told the detectives. Contrary to what he had said to the police, Richard's marriage was not as happy as it seemed. Despite living under one roof, their lives were almost separate, with no interactions. The couple even slept apart and did not dine together. In his diaries, Richard expressed deep anger and hatred towards his wife, hinting that he would take care of it soon. Richard meticulously recorded his wife's daily activities, including her affair. The diary entries continued up to January 24, 1988, the day Janet died. During a more detailed search of Richard's home, police also collected Janet's medications, vitamins, coffee cans, and cosmetics for testing. Analysis of Janet's cosmetics revealed Richard's method of poisoning. It turned out that Richard had laced his wife's cosmetics with selenium. The small amount of selenium that Janet used daily would be absorbed through her skin and accumulate over time, leading to a gradual death. Cyanide, a much faster-acting poison, might have been added to Janet's coffee on the day she died. On October 1, 1991, Richard Overton was officially arrested on charges of murdering his wife, Janet Overton. At the time of his arrest, Richard Overton had just married his fourth wife. However, the man steadfastly denied any involvement in Janet's death. In response to police interrogation, Richard, knowing he could not deny it, admitted to having put selenium in the drink of his first wife, Dorothy Boyer. But Richard claimed it was merely a prank intended to scare Dorothy. The reason he gave was that he thought she was mistreating their children at the time. Nevertheless, Richard asserted that he did not do the same to Janet. This was completely dismissed by the prosecution, who believed that Richard had poisoned his wife over a prolonged period, and on the day she died, he had put cyanide in her drink in the morning before she left the house to go whale watching with their son. During the trial, the prosecution asserted that Richard Overton had the means, motive, and opportunity to kill the victim, Janet Overton. Richard had the ability to obtain poison due to his previous work in the defense industry, which gave him access to cyanide and other metallurgical materials. In earlier interrogations, Richard always claimed to have a happy marriage. However, the contents of a diary showed that he harbored deep hatred and anger towards Janet, and their marriage was quite troubled. This animosity led to the poisoning of his wife with selenium and cyanide. The man had applied poison to Janet's makeup and food, causing her to exhibit strange symptoms in the period leading up to her death. The symptoms of selenium poisoning were similar to what his first wife, Dorothy, had experienced 2 decades earlier. Several doctors testified that Janet had visited them, but could not explain why her health had deteriorated so rapidly. Some individuals connected to the case, such as Janet's lover, Bill Dawson, and Richard's first wife, Dorothy Boyer, were also present in court. Bill Dawson testified before the grand jury that, over a 6-year period in the 1980s, he and Janet secretly met at hotels, motels, and on various modes of transportation, including his van and truck, for intimate encounters. His testimony was a key element in the prosecution's case against the defendant, Richard Overton. The prosecution believed that Richard Overton, suspecting his wife of having an affair with Bill Dawson and other men, developed hatred that ultimately led him to murder his wife. During cross-examination, the defendant's attorney, Robert D. Chatterton, attempted to cast doubt on Bill Dawson's testimony, suggesting that Bill might have more to hide than just having an affair with Janet. Chatterton hinted at accusations made by his client during a recorded interview with investigators. In that interview, Richard had mentioned that Janet had told him she might have discovered financial misconduct in the school district related to Bill. Thus, Attorney Chatterton deliberately questioned Bill Dawson about his assets, including a 49-foot boat and property he owned in Seattle. Of course, Bill Dawson denied any wrongdoing, stating that he had earned money from real estate before joining the school district. To the prosecution, Dawson's testimony seemed to corroborate several items from Richard Overton's gross diary, which detailed his wife's activities. The diaries, seized by investigators, showed that Richard Overton meticulously recorded his wife's activities. For example, he knew where to find items Richard Overton called his ex-wife's seductive devices, including condoms, vibrators, and other sexual aids. Some diary entries also mentioned Bill Dawson and his boat. Additionally, the defendant's ex-wife, Dorothy, appeared in court and revealed everything, from Richard being unfaithful to how he poisoned her after she filed for divorce. The prosecution also presented evidence against Richard Overton. In light of the evidence presented, the jury found Richard guilty of first-degree murder in his wife's death, although the man continued to insist on his innocence. Richard was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In a sentencing report, the prosecutor stated that Richard Overton was a liar and manipulator of the truth, arrogantly yet strangely effective in ways I have ever seen. In the years that followed, Richard maintained his innocence until his death in 2009. Richard died at the age of 81 from complications of diabetes and dementia. In 2021, the Oxygen Network aired an episode of Real Murders of Orange County, detailing this murder case. The case of Janet Overton is a complex and notable example of poisoning-related crime, with many puzzling yet surprising elements. This case serves not only as a family tragedy, but also as a reminder of the complexities of poisoning cases and the need for thorough and careful investigation at every stage.